So my name is Ita. I'm a librarian at Tamworth Library and Central Northern Regional Library. And I would like to welcome you all to our online In Conversation author event with Harry and Bryony Lancaster. So first, I would like to acknowledge that I am coming from the traditional lands of the Kamilaroi people, and I recognize their continuing connection to this land and pay my respect to the elders past and present. And I extend that respect to any Aboriginal people present here today. And of course, we're meeting online today, so you guys come from different parts. So I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. So now it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to Bryony and Harry. I'm just going to ask Chris to turn off your video for now, please, so we can focus on Harry and Bryony. And then at the end, you can turn it back on again. So Bryony and Harry, they're both founders and directors of Egg of the Universe. And Bryony is a yoga teacher of 20 years. And I just wrote it down because I find that so nice, that you are passionate about the transformational capacity of yoga, not just for a stronger and more supple body, but also for a more accepting and relaxed way of being. How lovely is that? That's great. And then Harry's always been interested in food with his mum and his grandmother, but when he had a digestive issue in his late 20s, he became interested in getting better through food and eventually came to Whole Foods. And thanks to that, we can now, experience his knowledge and his books and his beautiful recipes. So thank you both and welcome. And we all say welcome, but you can't see him. So first, I'd like to congratulate you on the book. This is Harry and Bryony's book, and it looks absolutely beautiful. And it is also beautiful. Just, I got it on the Friday and I kept reading it all weekend. I said it to your publishers, I couldn't put it down. So it's not just a cookbook, it's not just a yoga book, it's a lifestyle book. So congratulations, it's fantastic.
Thank you.
So why did you write this book now after you've been in the business for 15 years? What made you do it?
Well, I guess so much of how we've evolved what we've offered is so organically, just one little thing at a time. And so we started with one small studio and then added the cafe, and then down the line we started to grow the business, and then we decided to expand the business into a second site. But just at that time, one of our students also worked for Murdoch Books. So she's a writer and a publisher. And she said to us, I'm reluctant to ask because this is my sanctuary and I love it so much, but I really want to publish your book for you and I can see it. And I'd love to do it. Would you consider it? And we thought, yes, absolutely. I mean, we didn't even have to think about it for a second because it's something we always wanted to do, and students of ours and customers of ours at the cafe had always said, when are you going to do a book? And we've got young kids and we only ever wanted to do what was manageable and what was enjoyable. And it was just at the time we thought it was the right time just to dive in, and we knew with Murdoch that this is what they do so well, and they were so friendly and they just totally got us, and we just knew they'd get the best out of us. So we absolutely dived in, and little did we know that halfway through writing the book, we'd hit, all COVID and all the challenges of expanding our business. So it was all happening at the same time. So it was a very whirlwindy time, but it's really exciting in the second lockdown now to be able to celebrate the hatching of the book into the world, and just how lovely people are being about it. And so it was worth all the hard work. But yeah,
congratulations. And I also like that. Sorry, you go, Harry.
I was going to say we had various friends who had seen trying to self-publish over the years and did an incredible job doing that, and just the support we got from Murdoch to bring it through to this sort of level of quality at the end was just amazing. So it made the journey that much better.
Yeah, it is gorgeous. And both of you write beautifully in there. Have you written before? Like, because this is your first book, isn't it?
Yeah, this is our first book. I love writing, but I've never written anything like this before. Sometimes I write articles for yoga magazines and wellbeing articles, wellbeing magazine and yoga journal. And I love writing little blogs, but nothing ever like this before.
And similar for me, I've always loved, I like writing, but I've over the years been more tied up in sort of helping to run the business rather than writing content, which I always imagine doing in all the spare time that doesn't necessarily emerge. So this was a great excuse just to knuckle down and actually produce something a bit more, with a bit more body to it. And yeah, it felt good. Yeah.
And I'm not nervous about the idea of writing because my dad's an author and he's written many, many books. My sister's a journalist, so she writes, and my other sister writes a lot at the moment. So it's very much a comfortable sort of idea. And lots of my friends have put out beautiful cookbooks and things. So a couple of fiction. So it wasn't too daunting because I'd seen so many of my friends and family do it as well.
Oh, well done. It's a beauty for especially a first book, very polished. So you said before it was nice to hatch it into the universe. Well, that's really the name, isn't it? Egg of the Universe. So how did you come up with that for the yoga studio and the cafe?
The name?
Yeah.
So we had the yoga studio first for many years before the cafe came along. And at that same time, we were looking for a new name for the yoga studio, but we weren't quite ready yet. So we had to come up with a name that was going to be good for the cafe first, that we could then bring the yoga studio across to later on. And Egg of the Universe, or Cosmic Egg, is a yoga posture that I've always loved, because it's just you're curled up beautifully at the end of class, and it represents a sort of sense of completion and death and rebirth. And I was in Egg of the Universe one day, and I thought, how about this for the name? And I came home and tried it on Bri, and she immediately sort of smiled and thought, yes. So I started researching the name and the meaning behind the posture, and discovered that it was a sort of creation myth in so many different cultures from around the world. And even in modern scientific thinking, there's this idea that there was some kind of cosmic egg just before the Big Bang. And the idea of the cosmic egg is very prevalent in Hindu, the yoga philosophy, in that Brahman comes from the golden womb. So we realized that obviously had this amazing depth of understanding behind the name. So we started trying it on various friends just to see if they thought it was a good idea or not. And their immediate reaction was always to laugh at first, and then pause, and then just go, yeah, I think that's good. That's got something. And for us, that just matches our values beautifully, because our whole ethos is to try and make everything we do as easily accessible and fun and light, so that we can meet people where they're at, but then without dumbing down the kind of beautiful transformational power of both the whole foods knowledge and yoga knowledge behind the scenes. So it kind of fitted us perfectly, and so we were away. That was it.
Beautiful explanation. I had written these questions before I started doing yoga with Bryony, and I've done yoga for years, but no one has ever said that was Egg of the Universe. And when you said it and we're in that pose, I go, aha. But it's so good to get your explanation on that, because I only knew it as the love gauge. Just love yourself, be safe. So with my books, and you saw I just have two of them, but normally when I read a book, I have my little notepad, and whatever I think is a quote worthy of my notebooks, I put it in there. But at the end, I just stopped doing that, because there's so many beautiful lines in your book. Straight away when you open it, there's this warning: yoga and whole foods have been known to cause health and happiness. That is so good. It's such a good opening. And then Harry won me over when you said about good foods. It's not about denial, because so often it is. But you said it's living in harmony with the land while feasting on the goodness of its produce. That's what I'm doing, because I live on a little hobby farm, and I thought, hey, he's writing about me. So, and I also love your yoga eating philosophy. So would you be able to share that with the people here, what it is and how you would do it?
So the whole concept of the yoga of eating is basically as you become, often as you begin yoga practice, but you don't have to do yoga practice to practice the yoga of eating. You become you're sensitive to your body's needs. And the more you apply that to, all aspects of life, but in relation to food in particular, if you begin to just bring more awareness to what you desire when you eat, right, and why you desire food when you eat it, because many of us are used to kind of eating automatically and not necessarily associating how we feel with the foods we've eaten or thinking about what's triggered our desire to eat in the first place. So it's basically just about bringing a higher level of mindfulness or a thought process into what triggers your desire for food, then how just really diving into how food tastes on a deeper level, and then extracting more joy and pleasure from the act of eating, which for many of us, including myself, often means just slowing down a little bit and taking your time a bit more. And then beyond the act of eating is kind of just feeling into how the food you've recently or drinks you've recently had make you feel. And you could extend that, a few minutes beyond, when you've eaten, or a few hours, or even into the next day. And gradually what that does is to builds up a nice new and refreshed feedback system. And the body kind of gets reattuned to naturally understanding what foods and, that are good for you. And with everyone being unique, it's this point of not needing to fit ourselves into somebody else's concept of what a good diet is. Sure, you want to base your diet on some good grounding foundations of nutritional understanding, but really, we're our own best guides if we just let ourselves be. So, it's all about just tuning in, enjoying your food, and allowing your tastes and flavors or natural desires to lead you in a certain direction, and allow a natural feedback system to adjust your kind of navigational system to find your own nutritional sort of true north. And that's a bit of a practice. It's a really fun thing to start and explore. But I was really inspired by this, by Charles Eisenstein's book called The Yoga of Eating, which goes into this whole concept in a really in-depth, quite intellectual manner. But it's a really great book, and it was an inspiration to start practicing more deeply in our lives. And it's what we've been teaching for quite a while ever since.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really just being mindful too, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's deep awareness to everything around food, but also what I love about the way that we not only eat and celebrate with our food, but also with yoga and all of the things is about extracting the greatest amount of pleasure from whatever you're doing at the time, so it can be a celebration. And as you'll know from doing your yoga, when we can become more aware of the little things in life and just really enjoying our food, or enjoying a few deep breaths in the beautiful country air, and sun on your face and grass under your feet, those little things, when we can be really mindful to them, end up being really little moments of joy, which can make our days, just even stressful days, even in lockdown times, more joyful. So it's about extracting joy from life. Yeah.
And that goes,
for sure.
Yeah, it goes back to that original quote you talked about at the beginning. Like, a lot of our food philosophy is not about denying yourself pleasure, which the Western psychology kind of so often goes into, thinking that you've got to deny yourself fun and pleasure and taste and flavor, and in order to feel good about yourself, rather than turning it around and seeing if you can seek more pleasure and enjoyment from the way that your food makes you feel, and celebrating that, and just basically being honest with yourself when food doesn't make you feel good. Just use it, no judgment, just use it as a great feedback tool. And when food makes you feel wonderful, you're on the right track. So
yeah, I love how you just said no judgment, because so often people, beat themselves up about their food choices. And if you're going to be bad, you might as well enjoy it, and then, go back to good food.
Absolutely.
All right. So the way your book is presented is just beautiful, but I also really like how you do it in your spring, autumn, summer, winter, or, in the right order. Who came up with it? Because it's not just what you eat in those seasons, it's also how you move. How did you come up with that? It's brilliant.
So I guess a number of years ago now, we started to run a lot of programs in a seasonal way, because Harry and I both became interested in traditional Chinese medicine and also Ayurveda. And so sort of the ancient Chinese and the ancient Indian way of looking at wellness in the body, and particularly the traditional Chinese medicine. We were both studying with a teacher who was very led by that. And so it also ties in beautifully to yin yoga, which I'm a massive fan of. And so we started paying attention to, gosh, we really do feel different in spring. There is that sense of hopefulness and optimism. And there is just that sense of, got to clean out those cupboards and sort out that drawer. And that just does arrive from nowhere, as it seems. But with that, there's also stress and sort of restlessness and anxiety that we noticed that we didn't necessarily have in winter. And we were kind of like, this is so interesting. And, in autumn, we'd start to notice, both of us, just a little bit of sort of like a melancholy and a bit of sadness. And of course, whenever you refer back to the text, that's what they say the emotions of that season are, because it's the letting go of the summer, and it's the saying goodbye of the harvest, and it's that turning inward before the sleep of winter. So we started feeling it more in our bodies and our lives, and leaning more into those wisdom traditions more and more, and sort of going, okay, so spring is kind of a good time to do a cleanse, or, winter is a time to not do a cleanse, and, eat more yummy stews and stay warm. And so it just started becoming a really natural way of life for us that felt really natural. And so then everything that we offer at our yoga studios is just an extension of what we do at home. We never sort of try to teach something that we haven't first put through the filter of our own experience. So we started teaching seasonal workshops and spring immersions, and, doing the winter retreats and all this yummy seasonal stuff. And so it was just a real an obvious no-brainer for us to format the book like that. And we wanted it to be international. So we wanted our friends in Germany and cousins in Switzerland and family in England to be able to just pick it up in spring, rather than going, what? Because our seasons are opposite to theirs, of course. So that's the sort of inspiration, I suppose, for the seasonal rhythm.
Yeah.
And it's natural for food, of course, as well, that through the seasons, all our food supply changes, and even in the modern world, we still have food from all over the world. But it's naturally feels so much better to be going to your farmers markets and picking up what's locally seasonally available, and playing around, from that perspective, and because that naturally just gives you what you kind of need anyway. So it all just generally feels better if you slot yourselves into the general flow of the nature around you and the seasons that that you flow through. So.
Yeah, for sure, because it feels like nature gives you what you need at that moment. But in modern life, in supermarkets, you can buy strawberries all year round, basically, and so we lost that touch, didn't we, with the season. So it's so great to go back to that with your help. So where are we? I'm just chatting to you and so I forget where I'm in my questions. Spring, yeah. So when I started reading it, it just became spring. So it was perfect timing for me. And it's the perfect time to start something new. So I can't think of a better season to start with Whole Foods. And other than buying your book, have you got any other tips for people how to start that?
With starting with Whole Foods, I guess not to get overwhelmed, you know, because another great book to get alongside ours, of course, would be Sally Fallon's Nourishing Traditions book, which really I sort of see as the Whole Foods Bible, where she goes into, like, you know, real depth around, you know, the history and understanding of how the whole foods philosophy emerged to be understood in the modern world. So our book was designed to be like a really easy entry point. So it doesn't go too heavily into all the nutritional understanding of why you soak and sprout and why you ferment things and you know, why you make stocks and broths, and why you want to be eating good fats and all that kind of stuff. So I would personally, you know, looking through the book going, right, well, what recipe really appeals to you? And in every single recipe that's in the book, well, most of the main ones, there will be a specific, I would say, sort of classic Whole Foods food preparation technique, whether it's, you know, soaking and sprouting your nuts or seeds, as you might like to for making the granola you mentioned. So it's a relatively straightforward granola recipe, but you've got to soak and sprout your buckwheat kernels before you can then make the recipe, and that's like a 2 to 3 day process. So you know, but once you've done that, it's really easy. And so I'd basically dive into a recipe, go, right, why are we soaking and sprouting? Check out the front part of the informational side of the book and just go, right, well, what is the nutritional understanding behind why we soak and sprout? And then take it from there. And then not feel you have to do everything at once. Because that's exactly what we did. I remember I first devoured the kind of knowledge behind Whole Foods because it just sang so much sense to me. It was the first common sense food philosophy that I'd come across after quite a lot of exploration. What was so exciting about it is that you can apply the Whole Foods cooking philosophy to any style of cooking from around the world, to any culture. And it's the same basic techniques that you're taking with you. And so, you know, if you've just got that basic understanding of what you're looking for, and then you build up your practical knowledge of how to do things, then it all becomes really easy, but over time, of course.
Yes.
And in our family, it sounds like the same as your home. Harry is definitely more of the cook.
Yeah.
And so he a lot more than I do. And so sometimes I can feel really overwhelmed by the intricacies, but it's just about, for me, starting simply. So the things that I now do just without even thinking about it, as soaking my nuts before making almond milk and soaking porridge oats the night before, because that's just so simple with a little sprinkle of salt, you know, just the simplest things. And I think that's just so important, to meet ourselves where we are rather than saying, right, I've got this list of 25 things that I have to do. Oh my God. And then we get annoyed and then we just throw the book out and say, oh. So I think it's just really important to meet yourself where you are, have a really kind and friendly understanding of, well, what are you really going to be able to do? And then just do that little tiny things. And then over time, hopefully you start feeling better. And then you go, actually, there's something in this. And then you just build on.
I think there's really fun, exciting things to start with that are interesting and different, like just making your own sauerkraut, for example.
Yeah.
I think is such a cool, process to do in your kitchen. It's super simple. You're shredding cabbage, you're salting it, you're pounding it, and then you're sticking it in a jar and letting it ferment with the natural bacteria that's on the cabbage. You know, and then that's making this sort of magical substance that's really high vitamin C, and it's got great probiotics for your body, And it's basically, the bacteria that's living on the cabbage is the same that lives in your gut. And, if you think about our ancestors having done this for so many generations before us, prior to the advent of the modern age, and they did that without knowing what was going on. They just did it because it was a traditional process. And their taste and flavors would have attuned them to understand when the sauerkraut or the ferment was correct and had worked well and tasted good. It would have all been instinct and feeling and knowledge that would have been passed down through the generations. So I think start small, get excited by what you're doing and share it with somebody else is the best way to do it.
That sounds great. And it's funny that you mentioned the sauerkraut, because that was my second recipe I want to try. So there you go. So one of my favorite parts of the book is the basic whole food section, because then you can just build up your repertoire of, the things you really should have in your house. And it's so good. And I love the sauces as well. And one of you must love it as well, because you nearly caught your first cafe soul sauce or something like that. So I know I will return to this section time and time again. And my favorite recipe there is sauerkraut, which you just talked about. What is your favorite recipe there of the, the basics that you should know?
In the basics, we go through a lot of mayonnaise in our house.
I love mayonnaise. Well, I'm Dutch, so
So the Aiolis, because, and again, this is one of those things that everyone growing up hardly ever had fresh mayonnaise. Every now and again as a special treat. And my mum and my grandmother were amazing cooks, but that wasn't really part of a natural part of their repertoire. But I've always loved dips and sauces on the side. And one of those beautiful things about diving into the whole foods kind of concept is that you can recreate the original version of everything that we in the modern era have kind of just naturally been buying in the supermarkets. And there's such poor versions of what you can make in your own home. Primarily because if they're making them from real ingredients and with a short shelf life in the supermarket, like your standard pot of mayonnaise would have to cost like $20, which no one would buy. And so, for about the same price with a decent olive oil, a great organic fresh egg, clove of garlic and a hand blender or a whisk, you can make this amazing sauce that's really healthy, great for you. And, you don't, all you need is a simple salad and a few roast bits and bobs or something to mix it with. And, you've got, the simplest, but really tasty lunch or dinner or whatever you want.
Yeah.
So.
And the mayonnaise really is one of those things that's so easy, even for once you get used to it with a hand blender, it's so quick. So whenever we run out, you just go, oh, I'll just quickly make another one, and so that's a big one in our house. The kids are obsessed with it. And also one of our best friends, he Angus,
he's mentioned in the book.
And he's mentioned in the book, and he used to always just love the mayonnaise that we'd make, and he has decided never ever to buy a shop bought one again. So we've converted one. Only 1 million people to go. But
no,
also,
we're definitely.
Yeah, but also the pesto. We love the pesto, and often we'll just run out into the garden and just find whatever's there, little kale here or little bits and bobs here, and just chuck it in and whiz it all up.
Yes, so good. Fresh is best, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's so good.
And again, it's basically you have a few basic techniques, and then you can freestyle and do create whatever you like from mixtures of the various different basics, and it's a great exploration once you've got the
And there's so many good recipes in your book, not just the basics, like all through the book. How did you decide what to leave in and what to take out? Because I'm sure you have many more recipes than these.
I guess when we're looking at originally speaking to Murdoch, we just started laying it out, and we wanted to have a healthy amount of the recipes that the favorites from the cafe. But there's always limitations in what you can have on the menu within hospitality businesses.
Yeah.
For various reasons of operations and shelf life and this, that, and the other. So we also wanted to flow through quite a few sort of more family favorites. And we just started playing around, and just seeing what felt right, with the different seasons. And I wanted to come up with a few new things. So we wanted to do a mixture of old favorites, favorites from the cafe, and some new fun things. And so, we think it's come together relatively well for the seasons. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A nice balance between vegan, vegetarian, and meat dishes, so that
Yes.
there was real variety for, because as many of our community are vegetarian, many are some are vegan, and many are meat eating. So we really wanted to meet everyone where they are and have something for everybody in there.
Yeah, it's very accessible, your book, for anyone, because you don't, like you said, you don't judge. You just say, try this and listen to your own body, and you just give guidance. That's really good. I like it. I'm sure I have a question about that later, but we'll come to it. So I also love, because I love yoga as well, how Bryony incorporates the yoga and the meditation through the book. And I did one of your yoga online classes, not with you, with one of your other teachers, and this just stuck in my mind. It was about a pose, but she said, do this with ease and compassion, not with force and aggression. And I thought, that seems like your whole life philosophy, like it comes through in the book, comes through, in your classes. Is that so, or did I get that completely wrong? Because if it is not, you should have it.
No, absolutely. I think you've summed it up there. And I think what we do really carefully is choose teachers who have that kind of an ethos. So we really want to meet people where they are. Any age, any size, any height, any shape, any race, anything, any gender. And so we really just want to meet people where they are and say, come on the journey of yoga and just breathe and move and feel good. And it's so important not to take the practice too seriously, and to let it be something that we think, oh, no, that's not for me. We just want to open the door to as many people as we possibly can in a way that's going to be really friendly and welcoming. And so that sort of ethos of just without pressure, just easeful, celebrate, move your body, enjoy it, feed it beautifully, move it lovingly. And I think that is a massive ethos of ours. And that's why a lot of people, certainly in Sydney, and luckily now with online, we can reach, you in Tamworth and things like that. It's kind of, we really just want to make it as accessible and friendly and welcoming to as many people as we can. And because we all feel better when we breathe deeply, we all feel better when we move our body, we all feel better when we have time in nature and realize it's spring and have our feet on the grass, and take those moments to smell the season coming in, or it's so simple, but we miss it sometimes. And I think the worst thing for Harry and I is to have a food philosophy or a yoga philosophy that felt inaccessible, because it's really appropriate for everybody at any stage of life, and really everybody to be able to get something from, and come back to that understanding of extracting the greatest amount of joy from it that you possibly can, even if it's a really beautiful, simple yoga class, or a nice walk in nature, or a lovely seasonal feast.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually what I wrote. All through the book, you tell people to listen to their body, as everyone has different nutritional needs. And I find it so lovely that you give us all these great ideas, and then you give us the freedom to choose what would work best for us. So it's very unjudgmental, and you give us all these tools, but yeah, I love how you do it gently, not just push it down people's throat. Just take what you need. So I would recommend everybody, like The Egg of the Universe. I'll show the book again. Beautiful, beautiful book. I would recommend it to all my friends, and because most of them are interested in wellness or yoga or food. I just think in this pandemic, everyone should look after themselves a bit better. And when you look after yourself better, you can look after each other better. So I just want to thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, and the love comes through, and it's so sustainable. And I just I'm wondering if you're working on a second book, because this one's just so good.
It was so interesting. I have just in the last few days and weeks just started thinking about the next one. And I mean, I would love to write another one that goes deeper with yoga and meditation. But I'd love Harry to do another foodie one. And I think it's definitely going to happen. I can feel it I can feel it bubbling away.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I think at some point, yes, we might need a little bit of
might need a year off.
Recovery from the last couple of years of trying to reinvent various wheels. Yeah, there's definitely inspiration there for more books, I think, from both of us, given enough time. So
yeah, I might also open it to the participants for questions. There's a really long one here.
Should we go into
Oh. Shall I read it?
Well, we can see it.
Oh, you can see it? Okay. And all the other participants can see it if they go onto...
Would you like to read it out? And we'll...
The chat. Do you want to read it out?
Sure, we can. Having done a natural dietetics course, my philosophy became eat and be happy. I adapted a Queensland course to the cold climate of South Gippsland in Victoria. I've made my own apple cider vinegar for 20 years now, thoroughly enjoying listening to like-minded people and philosophies. Thank you. It's so important to listen to your body when choosing food, but you can keep the kale. I grow my own beef in as natural as possible conditions. Happy, healthy cows who live in a herd. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing. Beautiful. Sorry, I read it out, so I thought it was going to be a question, but thank you so much.
It wasn't actually a question, it's just this.
We totally agree. It's just all about taking what we do know and what we do learn and putting it through the filter of our own experience. And you know, that's just absolutely what we have to find our own true north with what is right for us, and only we can feel that out for ourselves.
Yeah, that's so true. So any of the participants, if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I can read them out to Bryony and Harry, or they can read it themselves. They do it so beautifully. The last question from me. What are you reading now? You're reading Sally Rooney, so you've basically already answered that. Do you read one book at a time, or do you read more?
Well, I've normally got a fiction and a non-fiction going. So I'm reading Sally Rooney's new book, Beautiful World, Where Are You? I think something like that. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I love the way she writes. She's an absolute wordsmith, as I'm sure lots of you guys would agree with. And my non-fiction is I just got a girlfriend who's given me I think it's The Untethered Soul, and it's a meditation, which is really beautiful.
Nice. Isn't that funny when someone asks you what you're reading and you're reading it all the time and then you just can't think of the name? Yeah.
I'm trying to look
I
over
am
here.
the same.
I'm trying to find the title of the book that I'm reading over there, but so I'm the same as Bri. I read, normally novels at night time and more sort of philosophy or knowledge-based stuff in the morning. So I'm reading a book called Utopia Avenue at the moment, which is about the formation of a sort of rock band in the 1960s, which is a bit of a wild ride and quite good fun. And then in the morning at the moment, I'm reading a book on Buddhism called Dancing with Life
by Philip Moffat. It's absolutely
which is amazing.
Beautiful.
It's just a beautifully, really easy entry into the deep knowledge of Buddhism. And also on the side, in more sort of business economics, I'm reading Daylight Robbery, which is a really interesting journey by comedian called Frisbee, an English comedian, just talking about how tax has basically shaped our societies going back to the beginning of time.
So a real mix.
Cool. No, it doesn't look like anyone has any questions. Is there any question you wanted me to ask you that I haven't asked you?
That is a good question.
Oh, anything that we wanted to add?
I think just for people not to be afraid to jump into a yoga practice. So, yoga, it really is designed for everybody to start where they are. Like, I think, the food side of this book is something that most people can pick up and relate to. And some people like yourself, obviously, have got a yoga practice, and so that's an easy thing to see in the book. But there'll be many people who we hope will pick up the book, maybe primarily for food, and think, oh, what is this yoga thing? But really, it's just about starting where you're at, having and just diving in. And most people we know who give it a bit of a go, and men and women, and then we need more men in the yoga scene. If they dive in, have a go, the results speak for themselves. You just feel better. It's not the same as going to the gym. There's a little bit of magic that happens that, you're physically working yourself out, and you're moving the energy in your body and that sort of thing. And you're getting all the physiological benefits of exercise like you would do going to the gym. But the magic comes from the mindfulness practice attached to the physical attributes. Because when you're doing a yoga posture for the first time and your legs are burning, or so there's a part of your body that's setting on fire, and you're being asked to breathe into it and hold, that's that your mind gets a break from the everyday world for those few seconds, and you tie that into a 60-minute class, and you come out the other end, and you go, the beginners often just go, they're sort of blown away by how good they feel. And it's because their mind has had a break from thinking about the regular everyday stuff that goes around our minds, all of us, every day. So our encouragement would be just for everybody just dive in and have a go, and see how we go. Get in touch if you're having any issues.
And definitely dive into any beautiful local yoga studios that you have near you, and also, if that doesn't work, then we've got amazing online teachers that you would have experienced that into. But I think that goes into Amanda's question, which is really beautiful, if we've still got time.
Go for it.
For me, Amanda, what inspired the journey into yoga, I can answer. For me, it was just a general sense of just disquiet with life, and just not feeling amazing. Like, I was doing running, I was doing the gym, and I was doing all that, but something I wasn't getting that magic, or that little thing that I was looking for. And so when I started doing yoga, it was just a little part of me came together. So it became a place that my fractured parts all became settled, and I just was able to feel more centered and grounded. And I was working in film production at the time, so completely different TV and film production, which was so intense, and sort of 12-hour days, and it was intense. And so the yoga practice became the most sublime and gentle and beautiful moment of every day. And then I'd go into the office and work 12-hour days and have 55 coffees and never sleep again, and all that, which I did for many years. But then I thought, oh gosh, you know what, I just want to do this more and more. And then so I did my first training, and then another training, then became a teacher, and so then it just kept unfolding. So I think it was I think Russell Brand says it really beautifully. He says, look, if you're just happy all the time, and you just have no worries, and you're never sort of sad or lost, you probably don't need yoga or meditation. But for the rest of us, come on down. So it's kind of like it's just such a remedy for life for me.
And for me, I think, I really wanted to get into yoga because in my 20s, my body just wasn't feeling good. I'd done a lot of sports as a kid and had injuries that hadn't healed properly. And I was just feeling, quite bent and broken. And yoga, really just helped to, physically make me feel better. But then that opened up the door to, an emotional awakening, as it were, just being able to delve more into your emotional state and your mental state. And, food's a natural part of that. I've always been really into food and cooking from a young age. But it never had anything to do with nutrition. And it was only when I had those beginnings of nutritional sort of, not nutritional, but digestive issues in my late 20s that I got into whole foods. But then I married that whole foods knowledge back into my passion for cooking, and you naturally combine the two together, so it's been a fun journey.
So good. I start the day like you, Bryony. I start 6 o'clock with yoga, meditation, and to me, it doesn't feel like a chore, because so many people go, oh, I want to do that, but I have no time or whatever. But for me, it's self-care. You start and then you feel good in yourself, and then you can deal with the rest of the day. Once you get into that routine, it's not a chore. It's something you look forward to. And a lot of people say meditation's so hard, but just concentrate on your breath. Just be in your body. Do you think? Yeah, so many people do stuff, but their mind is in the past or in the future. If you bring it together, then you can really enjoy your food because you're there.
And teaching meditation is one of my favorite things to do because...
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I love it. I love it, love it, love it. I've just finished a 4-week mindfulness course, and we're going to do a meditation teacher training together. And I love it so much because I can relate to the crazy mind, so I know what that feels like. I know how we both know. You sit down to meditate and you think it's going to be this beautiful still lake and all, and then it's sort of just the opposite. But I really love meeting people where they're at with that, and just helping them with really simple but fantastic ways to meditate. And I think it learning to really, what we're doing, as you know, is learning to be still and sit within the noise of the mind, and then over time that begins to settle and yield a little bit. But it's certainly one of the most beneficial tools of my life. And as I get older and older, I yearn for more longer extended periods of diving more deeply into my practice. And it's something that I look forward to, and that it excites me and is a constant unfolding wonder, because the more time I spend doing it, the more I sort of think, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah. So do you meditate as well, Harry?
Yeah. So I practiced a lot of yoga. I've never got around to teaching because we've always had amazing teachers of the physical yoga practice, and I spent a lot of the early years kind of doing more on the business side before the cafe opened. But I am hoping that in this next sort of phase of what we're doing, that I'll end up teaching a bit more in terms of meditation as well. So, but just on that, I think the way that the yoga systems have been designed is so good, because for a lot of people, starting straight away with a meditation practice is really difficult, and that's why we have physical yoga practice where you're marrying your breath and your mind to the movement that you're making. And then over time, that naturally settles the body down, settles the mind down a little bit, and it provides it's like the proving ground, preparing the ground so that then later on, potentially a meditation practice can emerge from that. And that's why, the ancient yogis, they knew what they were doing, and they set up the systems so that, the well-worn pathways that we can follow. And obviously our job is to bring it into the modern world and make it accessible to a modern audience. So that feels really fun.
Well, you guys do that beautifully. And it was so lovely to talk to you, and you're exactly like you are in the book. very accessible, non-judgmental, knowledgeable. So I'd like to thank you so much. I don't think there's any more questions. Is there anything you want to add, or you've told us all the stories you want to share for now? Because it's probably going to go in your next book.
But it's been so lovely talking to you, and thank you so much for inviting us. And as I said, thank you, Chris and Ita.
Yeah.
And I think, as I said in the beginning before we started, you know, I'm such a fan of libraries and the role that they play, librarians, in communities, and they're such a vibrant, beautiful hub, and they're such happy places. So well done for doing that.
Thank you.
Because it's very
So
important.
when you have your new book, maybe we're out of lockdown by then.
Yes.
Then you have to come to Tamworth and do a workshop for us.
Yeah,
That would be great.
We'd absolutely love to. Absolutely love to.